China just made a move that could bankrupt American companies by 2026. And they're using a $2 trillion weapon that's in play right now. Welcome to Voice on Pages, and let's get started seeing the real world. Look, that is not an exaggeration. We are smack in the middle of an economic war that is going to define this century, and believe me, the stakes could not be any higher. So, before we get into the weeds, I really want to know what you think. Who's got the upper hand here, China or the US? Drop your prediction in the comments right now. We'll check back at the end and see if you've changed your mind. All right, to really get what's happening, you have to understand the battlefield. And we're not talking about tanks or planes. This war is being fought with tariffs, technology, and total economic control. Just look at these numbers. It's insane. The US has slammed an average tariff of 51.1% on pretty much all Chinese imports. And of course, China hit back with a 32.6% average tariff on all US goods. This isn't a skirmish, it's a full-blown economic siege. And you know, this strategy is bringing in a ridiculous amount of cash for the US government. We're talking $30 billion a month. But that leads to the million-dollar question. Actually, the trillion-dollar question. Is it really China writing the check, like we're told? Or is there a hidden cost that maybe we're all paying? Well, the research is pretty clear. That bill isn't being paid by Beijing. Nope, it's passed right down the line, and the average American taxpayer is footing a bill of nearly $3,000 to $4,000 a year. So let me ask you, do you think these tariffs are protecting jobs, or are they just a hidden tax on you and me? And here's the scary part. This isn't the first time we've seen this movie. History gives us a really chilling parallel. Way back in the 1930s, the Smoot-Hawley Act kicked off a global trade war that caused global trade to collapse by 2/3, which only made the Great Depression so much worse. It's a serious reminder of how bad these things can get. But here's the thing. China isn't just sitting back and taking these punches. They have a massive strategic arsenal of their own. Let's talk about the Belt and Road Initiative. On the surface, it looks like this huge infrastructure project, right? But it's really a geopolitical weapon. By funding projects in 139 countries, China creates deep economic dependency. They're even giving military aid to places like Pakistan and Ghana to protect their investments. They are literally locking in their influence all over the world. And this might be their most powerful weapon. It's a complete stranglehold on rare earth elements. These are the minerals you need for basically everything, your smartphone, electric cars, even fighter jets. And China doesn't just dig them up, they control 90% of the processing. It's a near total monopoly. And you better believe they are not afraid to use that power. When China decided to restrict exports, US imports of these critical minerals just plummeted by 37%. They could, literally with the flip of a switch, cripple huge parts of the US tech and defense industries. So what's the US doing about all this? How do you fight back? Well, Washington has its own counter-strategy, and it's all about bringing manufacturing home, hitting China with tech sanctions, and trying to supercharge our own industries. But it's just not that simple. I mean, the idea of reshoring, bringing all those jobs back to America, it sounds great. But listen to what Apple's CEO Tim Cook said. The US has a massive skills gap. After decades of sending jobs overseas, the specialized workforce just isn't here anymore. And that makes bringing it all back incredibly expensive. Now, the big centerpiece of America's plan is the CHIPS Act. It's a massive $280 billion authorization to rebuild the U.S. semiconductor industry. But here's the reality check. China's state-run funds have been pumping tens of billions into their own chip industry for more than a decade. They've got a huge head start. And here's the real kicker. Those U.S. sanctions that were supposed to cripple China's tech sector, they've actually backfired in a way. It forced China to go all in on being self-sufficient. And as you can see, their market share in what we call legacy chips, the kind in your car or your microwave, has basically exploded. And that really gets to the absolute heart of this whole thing. The US is betting on its classic strengths, innovation, and our alliances. Meanwhile, China is leveraging its insane scale, its state control, and its long-term vision. So which approach is going to win? Now, this fight isn't just happening between two countries. The shockwaves are spreading across the entire planet, causing a lot of collateral damage, but also creating some very, very unexpected winners. See, as the US and China build these walls between them, other countries are rushing in to fill that gap. Take Mexico. Their exports to the US have just skyrocketed by over $164 billion. And it's the same story for Vietnam and India. They're seeing huge gains as companies desperately move their supply chains to get around the tariff. But back home in the US, the impact feels a lot different. That 1% jump in wholesale prices might not sound like a big deal, but it's the fastest it's risen in 3 years. And economists are pointing the finger directly at the trade war. It's a flashing red light for inflation. So, how does this actually hit you? It's pretty simple, really. When there's a tariff on parts and electronics, that extra cost just gets passed along the chain, from the importer to the retailer, and yeah, ultimately to you. This is exactly why stuff you buy every day, like your phone, could end up costing you more. So, that brings us to the end game. After looking at the weapons, the strategies, the global fallout, who actually has the stronger hand to win this thing in the long run? Well, the uncomfortable truth is there might not be any winners. In fact, most economists are calling this a tale of two losers. US consumers are losing because we're paying higher prices. Chinese producers are losing because they're facing these tech chokeholds. And for everyone else on the planet, it just makes the world a more unstable, more unpredictable place to live. The US-China trade war isn't just about tariffs. It's about who writes the rules of the 21st century economy. Can China really outsmart the US? Or is this a lose-lose game? Now, think back to what you said at the beginning. Has your opinion changed? Comment your final prediction. I'll be reading every single one.